Right, good evening. Welcome to the Azeroth Review. Again, I always seem to get cock something up, which it's only a minute late. It's all right, I think. Yes. So it's actually going to be quite awkward tonight, I suspect. Oh no, we're not allowed to talk about politics anymore. So we had a little preamble, just purely in text. People get right upset with me when I talk about politics. People get more upset with me when I talk about politics on this channel than the actual politics channel. So the only politics we're allowed to discuss is the politics of the Horde and or the Alliance now. But yes, I'm sort of quite excited about a lot of the stuff from the 8.15 PTR. Blizzard are also going to be saying things about classes and specs next week. So that's more interesting than exciting, I guess. I strongly suspect a lot of non-answers, but never mind. But unfortunately, spoilers. I don't know. People get upset with me with politics. Do they get upset with me with spoilers as well? Because, you know, the old gods theme in the old background there. This is the story I want from Battle for Azeroth. Well, not so much one. Well, I do, but just what I think it is. You know, the Horde and Alliance stuff, yeah, fine. Background stuff, as it always is. No problem. But as people have pointed out, the Horde and Alliance conflict story in BFA is really a poor man's version of the one we got in MOP. It did seem better in MOP. I don't know. That's my opinion. Am I going to go on the beach and test out that new gnome town and dungeon? Yeah, that's not on the PTR just yet, is it? That's for 8.2, I believe. Obviously, I will. I mean, you know, testing... I spend more time on the PTR, and I'm not even kidding. I spend more time on the PTR than I do the live version of the game. You know, testing things out. So, in fact, I've done more on the PTR than I have the live in game. I haven't even live in game. This has been really lazy of me. I need to do this. I haven't even done the 8.1.5 quests and stuff like that. I haven't done the Dark Shore stuff, and I haven't done the going off to get my toy from Sourfang. You know, so everyone's streaming for better times. I you know, like I've been saying, I don't think it's coming. You know, people keep trying to say, well, what if this? What if this? World of Warcraft is in the position it is in now, not to do with Activision. Yes, okay, they're now interfering. See, here's the thing, right? I've said it before, but I will say it again. Legion had a massive amount of resources. No expansion will ever have that again. It was just a weird freak storm of events that happened. So for BFA, if you don't think BFA had enough investment, first of all, it's not like... If I say it's not like it was rushed, that's the wrong word to use, because clearly it wasn't ready, but that's not the same as rushed. It was given the right amount of time for an expansion. So, I mean, I was saying to someone today, you know, you could argue it was rushed because it was brought out when it wasn't ready. Or you could argue that they wasted their resources, that they used their resources inefficiently, and they wasted them on resource-intensive content that the players don't even like. So that's the way I tend to look at it. But, you know. But yeah, so for the next expansion, not only have we got... And it's down to those developers. Yes, there are sometimes little chirps from above. But there haven't really been that many. If Activision were really sticking their fingers into World of Warcraft, we'd have loot boxes. We don't. Right? But what we now do have is a budget cut. So the next expansion is not only going to have the same basic team, but it's going to have a smaller budget. How on earth is it going to be better? Unless we're going to hope that those developers have learnt lessons. I have no confidence from what they're saying that they've learnt lessons, but I do accept that sometimes people do learn lessons privately, but just try and make out that publicly they've done everything right because they don't want to look silly publicly. But I have no confidence in that. You just found my channel. Hello, PMPM. You don't play anymore. Well, I hardly do now. You still find it entertaining. Shame to hear live in Scunny. No, you grew up there. There's nothing... I was going to say there's nothing wrong with Scunthorpe, but I couldn't actually get to the end of that sentence. But it's all right. I've been in worse places. Hi there, Petrial. There's a reason Bungie's cutting time with Activision. Yeah, but again, people are reading too much into this Bungie thing. All Activision were just an investor in it, really. You know, they just invested in their projects. They weren't part of the same company. They were just like partners in projects. Whereas Blizzard and Activision are the same company. They merged. You know, there's no buying them out apart from anything else. They haven't even got the money to. But there is no buying them out. It's the same company. It's just Activision is the senior partner in that sort of company. Am I going to catch the ESO live stream in 3 hours? I strongly suspect not, because there's an extremely important piece of news that's going to be happening round about now in the UK. And although I'm not going to distract this stream with it, I am, when the stream has finished, going to be creating a video for one of my other channels on that thing. So I'm plenty busy tonight. But yeah, so... But, you know, the next few WoW... The thing is, I've got quite a few WoW videos I need to do. It's almost like being back, because when I was back raiding, I always had this great big long list of videos I wanted to do, and I could barely touch all the ones I wanted to do. Not enough time. Now that I'm not raiding, in theory, not in theory, in practice, it takes out a certain type of content. So it's much easier to do the things that I plan to do. Whereas now, I have... what do I have? What am I talking about? I'm going old. I'm going senile. I've completely forgotten. Yes. So now I've got loads of stuff to do again. There's a couple of guides I need to get out, and I think I need to get them out fairly quickly. And there's all the speculation. People were asked me about speculation. I said, well, I've done all my speculation. They haven't changed anything. Now they have. There's a load of stuff been data mined. 8.1.5 PTR. Old God stuff. I was expecting the old God stuff. What other channels? So I have a political channel. I discussed this last week. I have a political channel where I upset people. I have a channel that chronicles my weight loss surgery, and I have a Warhammer channel. Everyone disagrees on political things. That's why I'm not allowed to talk about politics here. If you get any two intelligent people, even ones that have got like the same background, the same general political views and all the rest of it, if they talk long enough, they'll disagree about something. A mailbox in the channel would be hilarious. No. Could you imagine a live stream on the other channel? Oh my God, that would be asking for trouble. It's already asking for trouble having a political channel in the first place. Do you know what? I got to 1,000 subscribers at the weekend, and then they automatically review the channel to see if you can monetize it, and it came back as okay. And the videos, one of them they did try and demonetize, but again, that got through on review. So there you go. It's called a different bias, but you know, it will it absolutely upset people. Anyway, let's have a look. Politics of the Horde and the Alliance. Who should be war chief? If you want to talk about politics, who should be war chief when BFA is finished? Because it's not going to be Sylvanas and it's not going to be Sourfang. We know that. They basically revealed that ages ago. So I am neither liberal nor conservative. I understand that Americans don't quite get that you've got to be one. You don't have to be one thing or the other. Liberal and conservative are both right wing. I'm left wing. I'm a socialist. But the Horde is stupid, changed my mind. It's getting most of the story at the moment. I mean, the Alliance are sneaking through. And there's some very interesting developments on the Alliance side of things, from what I've been reading. There's so much to digest there. There's so much stuff being data mined. I am spectacularly surprised that 8.1.5, I'm pleasantly surprised, has as much old gods related stuff in it, because, you know, from what it sounded like at BlizzCon, I really thought that wasn't really kicking off until 8.2. Because remember, the raid, Ashara raid, won't be until 8.2.5. So 8.2 is like the storyline, then 8.2.5 is like the proper content, the raid and stuff like that. So I thought that was what it's going to be. And there's me thinking, oh crap, we're only going to have 2 major patches of the actual good story, the old god story. But no. 8.1.5 gearing up nicely, which is just as well because I think they've exhausted the Horde and Alliance stuff. It's, you know, I've not been compelled by it. They're going to make Talanji War Chief. Do you know what? That's the best idea I've heard anyone say about Talanji. You know, a few people have said that. I'm not going to go as far as to say I would predict it, but it makes as much sense as more sense than anyone else, in fact. One, they talked about the fact that the Horde is going to be a new Horde. That Sylvanas and Saurfang represent the old Horde. There's going to be a new Horde. Talanji is as new Horde as you can get. Second of all, I reckon she's going to put one over on Bunsamdi. You know? So at the moment, it looks like she's trapped by him because of Rastakhan. I reckon she's going to be cunning. I reckon she's going to trick him. Or something's going to happen anyway. To unbind herself from him. But the other thing is, I think, yeah, I think she absolutely could, you know, take over. Or move the Horde in a different direction, be more proactive there. Because she seems that sort of character to me. And you look at the alternatives, if you look at the current leaders, obviously Gallowix, behave yourself. Doofer, Blood Elf guy with the eye patch, no. Bane, no. Apart from anything else, right, he is someone who wants peace between the Horde and the Alliance. That instantly marks him out as someone who's not suitable to have the title of War Chief. And second of all, he's just such a wet blanket. He really is. So, you know, I can't think of any better candidate than Talanji, quite frankly, without me thinking that that's what it's going to be. You know, so I just put it down to I don't know, but Talanji sounds the more plausible. Old Gods, but BFA is about faction war. No, the title doesn't even suggest that. You wish it was Thrall, but he's gone full wet blanket as well, though, hasn't he? He basically, the second Legion completely put paid to his legacy. You know, I mean, not all of you have played a shaman, perhaps. I didn't play it much, but I did create a shaman, and I did do the initial quest and all the rest of it, and I did a few other things as well. So when you pick up the Doom Hammer as an enhancement shaman, there's two sounds that you can hear, right, when you lift up the Doom Hammer. The first one is the Doom Hammer coming away from the rock. The second one is Thrall's balls dropping to the ground. From that point on, you know, no, you can't bring Thrall back. His legacy is completely tainted now. She does kind of balance both ways, and even what the Eastern Kingdoms Horde got going for them, at least in terms of Blood Elves, obviously Undead wouldn't be for it. See, I still wonder, well, I still think, this is what I still think. I think the Forsaken are going to fracture, and I don't think they've done with allied races. I don't think they've said they don't want loads and loads. I get that. I would be the same. I still have a sneaking suspicion there's going to be an undead allied race joining the Alliance. And because that Before the Storm novel, I just keep thinking in my head, if the Forsaken do not fracture in two, if they don't split into two, that Before the Storm novel was a complete waste of time. Because although there's little seeds of other stories in there, that basic story goes nowhere if the Forsaken do not split. With Sylvanas having one half and maybe Nathanos the other, who knows? I don't know. Or maybe Sylvanas goes off and doesn't become the leader of either faction. Nathanos takes over the Horde side of it, and Kalia takes over the other. You know, so much. So, oh no, hope. Where's the bloody thing? There it is. Need to scroll up. Hi, Hacken. How does it feel to have one of the best channel on YouTube? I don't think I do. If truth be told. In fact, it's getting smaller. It's quite worrying, really. Don't like it getting smaller. In fact, do you know what? I'm not plugging this political channel because I honestly don't want a load of people going to watch it if they're not interested in it. But it's outperforming this channel already. But anyway, never mind that. She could make a pact with her car. No, he's bad. He's bad. Anyway, we got Zandalari rep by killing her car. You don't think that the Zandalari are going to make friends with the car, surely? Evening Sky. No Thrall because no Metzen. I'm sure he'd come back to do some voicing. You know he would. You know he would. I don't see that as being the kibosh on it. But no, it's just... Legion completely ruined the character of Thrall for me. The new leader could be the new allied race Orc lady from Draenor. Not well known enough. They're not developing her. Really not being developed for that. You're not a big fan of Thrall post-Cata. Well, I mean, that's another... I sort of thought that Thrall was still Thrall after Cata. It's Legion when it just went, you know. Whether through lazy writing or deliberately, you know, ostracising him, I don't know. You'd love to have the Desolate Council, whatever it's called, from the book. Yeah, well, most of them are dead now. Sylvanas killed most of them. And the ones that remain are the ones who decided, well, not decided, but came to the realisation that the Alliance would never accept them. So I don't think the Desolate Council itself would form part of that faction that would go to the Alliance. You know, so I don't know how much scope there is for that, Stain. Hi, Lukey. Yes, I am doing quite well now, actually. In fact, my wounds aren't even causing me that much problem. I can even bend down, pick things off the floor now. I used to have to kick them onto the floor, onto like the sofa or something, then bend down to that. Don't have to do all that anymore. The only true ally race leader that seems to have gotten decent is the Void Elf. Yeah, that's Alliance though. I don't think it's going to become the new war chief somehow. And anyway, really, you know, I still regard Illyria as the leader of the Void Elves. I know she's not officially, but she is. And I can't. That's another thing. That is something that I am, you know, seriously anticipating. I want to see the major storyline that Illyria is going to get, because that's got to be explosive. That has got to be. I think at the end of BFA, I will be disappointed if the Illyria story is not an absolute firecracker. I am anticipating, no matter how much I might criticise little bits from a technical point of view, I think the Illyria story is going to be awesome. I very much hope it is. And I can see an Illyria Sylvanas moment as well. In fact, I'm going to predict that there's going to be a cinematic with Illyria and Sylvanas. Not killing each other. Something else. The Nightborn leader. I don't like the Nightborn though. Don't like them. They constantly look like they're smelling a fart. Or something unpleasant. Just mean in terms of screen time. All right, okay, I see. The allied races as a whole not been shown too much. No, well, I mean, Kulturans and Zandalari are, although they're not quite. They're nearly there, nearly cooked and ready to come out the oven, but they're not quite there. Rathian annoys me. It's annoying. This is what I mean about the laziness of dropping a character for whole expansions when there's no like Rathian should be a character that's front and center in every storyline we've had since Cataclysm. You know, he was there in MOP, as you'd expect him to be. I mean, created specifically for it, really. But then to be missing, I suppose WOD maybe all right, but to be missing from Legion was ridiculous, and to be missing from BFA also seems foolish. If he's someone who wants to protect Azeroth, he's missed the two expansions where we were most directly protecting Azeroth. It's just laziness. It's absolutely... and it's also disrespectful to their own characters, I think. You need the Blood Elf versus Void Elf. Oh, yeah, a little showdown between those two. Yeah, that would be interesting. All you're waiting for is classic. Maybe we get a beta in March. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised there isn't already one. I know that there's a closed alpha supposed to be going on. But, I mean, you'd expect that anyway. You know, I mean, maybe it doesn't need a huge long beta, but yes, I would expect that there would be one. Quite on, you know, but it's pure luck getting into it, of course. Rathian bothers you too. Can't wait to see what they're going to do with that. What they're going to do, at some point, they'll do what they always do. At some point, they'll come up with a storyline. They'll try and think. They'll have a roundtable discussion about which character should drive it. And someone might say, "Oh, Rathian would be good for this," and they go, "Yeah, Rathian would be good for this," and they'll put Rathian in. It'll be a complete afterthought. It's a bit like Jaina in Legion. Where the hell was Jaina in Legion? Oh, she was fighting demons in her own way. No, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. She was completely absent from the main events. The greatest expansion will be Classic in 2019. It's not really an expansion, is it, though, really? It's a contraction. Am I excited for Classic? I'm looking forward to it. Not so much excited because I've done it. I've done it before. So I don't need to be excited. But I'm looking forward to re-exploring things that you can't explore at the moment in the game that are gone. Completely, the 1 to 60 content has been almost completely obliterated. The quests and the zones have. The dungeons largely have. And even the raids, the 3 raids the raids that remain are largely unchanged, you could argue. But then they removed a whole one in Naxxramas, so, You want some goodish black-winged dragons. I don't think there's going to be many. I mean, Rathian. Even Rathian's fairly ruthless when it comes down to it. You've got to remember, he wanted either the Alliance or the Horde to wipe out the other faction. He had to get told off by a Pandaren innkeeper. That's how brutal he was. So I don't know that he's good. He just has a purpose that, for the most part, aligns with our purpose. He wants to protect Azeroth. But I wouldn't say he's good about the way he wants to do it. Classic is too grindy. It is obviously going to be grindy, yes. Ragnaros 3.0. What are we going to do with him? I mean, we killed him once. Then he came back with some legs and killed him again. What was my progress in original Vanilla? So we got up to... We should have cleared the whole thing, but we didn't. We got up to Gothic. We were just about to kill Gothic the Harvester, basically, when they announced the release date for TBC. So there was a couple of months to go. And then the guild stopped raiding because everyone basically went, what's the point of raiding? They're all loot whores. What's the point of raiding just to then have our raid gear replaced by quest greens, which didn't even happen in the first place? Oh, thank you, Will. Will they skip a raid tier again to make the next expansion? No. They're up against it. They are up against it because the way I'm now looking at it, this is the way I see it. One, they're having to work on Revenge of the Potato People right now because we know, because they've said so, that they start work on the next expansion. They've already planned it out, but they start proper on working on it as soon as an expansion launches. So as soon as BFA launched, they started working on Revenge of the Potato People. That means most of the developers have gone over there. Some obviously still have to work on Legion, encounter designers, class designers, all the rest of it. 2, there are problems with BFA systems that need fixing. That's extra work. Something's got to give. But I don't believe a whole raid tier. If they do what they did in WoD, they are in real trouble. You've got to remember, they have just lost a crap load of subs. They do not dare do anything to bring Memories of WoD back. But they have got the difficulty of, they've already started the next expansion, of course. They've got to improve the systems in BFA that shouldn't really need more than tweaking at the moment, but they need major redesigns. And they've still got to carry on bringing out all the content. I mean, what you can definitely say is we're not going to get any extra little content, like Trial of Valor, that sort of thing is definitely out. And they've got budget cut. All of those things do not add up to a good next expansion. And as much as people may be hoping for it, and I'm not going to say it's not going to be good enough to play. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm going to be saying is it is not. I cannot see how those little facts stack up to somehow having a better expansion next than we've had for BFA. I don't get it. Do I think WoW will be cancelled in the next 5 years? No, I don't, and I'll tell you why. I don't believe that they will cancel World of Warcraft until they've got something else ready to go. and they haven't, you know, there is, even if they're working on it, it must be very early stages. There is no next Warcraft game that anyone knows about. So even if they'd started working on it, whatever it doesn't even have to be an MMO, whatever it is, you know, it's still got to be years away. One faction Anduin as leader. Later on, see, that's similar to the prophecy of Velen, isn't it? With Anduin leading the army of the light, which is still not absolute canon. But the way Blizzard sort of tend to be doing their stories at the moment, it's almost like they're taking it into account. So I believe that it may be. One more fight with the Void Lord. I don't think we can fight with the Void Lords directly. You offer me $15 million. Well, I'm not an accountant. I'm not even very good with my own money. I don't think I should be trusted with a multi-billion-dollar company, quite frankly. Although that being said, it's actually much easier to look after someone else's money than your own, because you don't care about spending someone else's money. And if you did that in that job, then that would be called embezzlement. That's not allowed. Do I think the budget cuts will hurt Classic? I really don't see how Classic can possibly cost that much. You know, all it needs is a small team and a broom cupboard and a laptop between them. You know, it can't cost that much. Seriously. And yet it may... I still think the way they've done the pricing of it is foolish. But that's how they've done it. I'm not sure how many it'll bring it. I'm sure it'll bring some in. I'm sure it'll bring enough in to justify the cost of it. More than, I think it'll be a profit maker. But I don't know. I'm not sure. Making people get a subscription for it was the best way. But no, I don't think the budget cuts will affect that at all. How could they? You know, the budget's already really small for it. You can't cut it because it doesn't really get a budget other than people working on it. That being said, I keep forgetting this actually. It's not, because that's the thing. When they announced it, they said it was just going to be this small team completely separate from World of Warcraft retail, and it wasn't going to affect retail at all. And yet at BlizzCon, Ian Hazacostas kept talking about how World of Warcraft developers were considering all these problems. So it's like, so now what you're saying is it has affected retail. That's a bit stupid. Although, as I said at the time, no one seemed to complain about that. So, you know, I don't know. You liked WoD more than BFA. Like, I personally preferred WoD to BFA, but that's because Raider, you know, the raiding was good in WoD. And the levelling was good in WoD. I liked the levelling in WoD. I didn't mind doing it about 10 times. I ended up doing it way over 10 times, in fact, about 15 times. Didn't mind it. I minded it after the first 10. But, you know, it wasn't that bad. But everything else was absent. But that suited me because I didn't want to do anything else. All WoD required me to do was raid. That's all I had to do. I didn't have to do dungeons, like shitty dungeons. Now, not that I'm saying I don't like doing Mythic Plus dungeons, but I don't like having to do lots of them. I didn't have to do PvP. You know, I didn't have to do anything. Didn't have to farm artifact power. Didn't have to do world quests. You know, I just did. All I had to do was the raiding. After the initial fast, the levelling was okay and the raids were fun. The raids were fun. Yeah, okay, yeah, they were badly paced. They have got better at the pacing of them, but the raids themselves were, and they were all good as well. That's what I would say. I'm not saying every single fight, but every single raid I felt was good. Not that there were that many raids. There weren't that many, but they were good. You didn't hear Classic was going to require subscription talk about pulling more subscribers away from BFA. No, so basically the way you get Classic now is going to be you have a World of Warcraft subscription. That's it. That gets you both of them. So if you want to use it just to play retail, use it just to play retail. If you want to use it just to play Classic, you just play Classic. If you want to use it to play both, you play both. So there isn't any... If you're currently playing retail, there's no extra cost for Classic WoW. But of course, Classic WoW isn't really for the people playing retail. It's for the people who want to play Classic WoW and don't like retail. It's an attempt to bring them in, I guess. But it's the same subscription. It's not a separate subscription for Classic WoW. It's a World of Warcraft subscription that gives you access to Classic and Retail. Just realised that Blizzard doesn't use the old server blades. No, they auctioned them off, in fact. They sold them off years ago. They use cloud-based servers, which is the reason why a lot of people in a zone makes BFA laggy. So I don't understand the technology of all these things. Classic's going to be laggy too. Yeah, but the thing is, it's not Classic if it's not laggy. They've said that they're going to shard it for the opener. When it launches, they're going to shard it. They said they're going to shard it for other things as well. I can't remember. But largely, it's not going to be sharded. So, yes, it's going to be laggy. I strongly suspect it's not going to be as bad as it was then because we're not playing on potatoes anymore. But, you know, yeah. We'll have to see if they can make the Gates of Anchorage run a bit better. I mean, something like that you can't shard, of course, can you? Can you? I mean, everyone would have to be in the same... No, you can't. Because there's one person on that server with the key that does it. Or that realm, rather. Wouldn't be the Classic without the experience of lag. Exactly. Exactly. Got to lag. Starting zones, but they hope to turn it off after a couple of weeks. Yeah, that's what I remember. I do remember them saying something else, though. I'm not sure. They didn't say in cities. I don't think they were going to shard cities. I think basically they said they were going to treat it from a sharding point of view like an RP realm, which generally doesn't have sharding, but except like certain... I don't think it was going to be exactly the same situations, but it was something like that anyway. I forget the details. But yeah. I mean, we'll just see. I mean, there's not that long to go for it, really, is there now? What's a good? I mean, they just said summer. I don't know which date it's going to be in summer. When do you think it'd be? I mean, it could be as early as May, or it could be as late as August. I don't know. But I still haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do about it. Like, I mean, I'll have 2 accounts for it. So I am going to level 2 at once, I was thinking. What I tried out when I was doing it on the PTR, when it was open for BlizzCon, is I had a Hunter and Paladin going around together. Well, they've said summer. I mean, August is pretty much as late as you dare leave it. I'd still be tempted to think they might want to try to get it out earlier. Yeah, it's funny. They sold the blades to cut costs, I imagine. I don't know about cutting costs as such. Obviously, when you sell anything, you're obviously wanting to put the money to some use, but I'm not sure they... Actually, didn't they donate them? No, it was for charity, I think, the auction. I think they donated the money to charity. I don't think they made any money out of it. Laggy servers like Blizzard stopping city raids because it's too laggy in BFA. Have they? I don't know. That sounds like a PvP thing to me. Wouldn't know about such things. How will they circumvent in Classic where a lot of people are in the same zones like World PvP? They won't. I think you've got to remember, Blizzard didn't want to do Classic WoW. And I'm quite sure there's still people there that don't want it. And there are some people that did, and now that they've had their say. The attitude will be, people want the Classic experience. Lag, people can't complain about it, you know. And I know they've said they want it to be up to a certain standard, but I think that's to do with things like animations and so on. But if there's server lag, I think that's just a consequence. You know, that's just something, well, deal with it, will you? And I think the only reason they're sharding it for the beginning when it first goes live is because there'll be potentially, I only say potentially, more people playing it. Oh, well, for how many realms there's going to be, they're not going to release as many realms as they did to begin with. There'll be more people playing it at the start of Classic WoW than there were when it was actually the first opening of World of Warcraft. There's a lot more being processed by the server now as well. Well, I suppose this is also true, yes. So what? There were some beer-faced city raids in the last few months. Oh, God. Drunk too much. Where Blizz just removed the players from the zones. No such things back in the day now. So people just got ported out, did they? Oh, that's unfortunate. Every player has dozens of procs running now that the server has to deal with. Yeah. If the animation is up to standard, you say you'll be playing it. Well, I mean, it sort of fell. Obviously, I've not played on private servers, so the last time I played Vanilla WoW was 2006, 12 years ago. But when I was playing it on that trial thing for BlizzCon, it seemed, reasonably as I remembered it. Not in every detail, but by and large, it did seem reasonably as I recall it. So I think it's all right. But people thinking they're going to get the classic experience are not. How can you? It's not a new game. We know exactly what it's like. We know everything about it. We're going to have more sophisticated communities for it and guides and all the rest of it. Advantage of the cloud servers, they can spin them up in a matter of 20-30 minutes rather than days or weeks. Oh, so being more flexible, do you mean in terms of needs? Because that was a big problem, wasn't it, for Warlords of Draenor? There were far more people... Mind you, they said that. I didn't understand that about WoD. There were far more people trying to log on than they expected, is what they said. Which is why I couldn't basically log on for a week. Bloody hell. But they surely must have known, because most people surely pre-ordered the game. So they must have had figures on how many people were going to be playing it. I never really understood that one. Never understood it. I strongly suspect that they just thought it could take it. And they got that wrong. And it's better to say, oh, more people played it than we expected, because that makes it sound like you produced a good product, than to say, yeah, do you know what? We thought we could handle 10 million people. Turns out we can't. You just fear that they couldn't make the retail servers not laggy during 40, 80 people against each other for years, and they even interfere in such situations. I don't believe they'll even attempt to solve anything other than the worst lag. Obviously, there won't be server collapses, you would hope. And patch days, you would think, will go much more smoothly. But when there's going to be a load of people congregating and say, the Barons to cause trouble, or where was the other place they used to do it sometimes, like Arathi sometimes, then, or South Shore, then you're going to get lag. And what are people going to do? Complain about lag? Blizzard will just go, it's classic, what do you expect? But the type of community interactions are not going to be the same as in Classic either. How can they be? It makes absolutely... we have more sophisticated communities already set up, and people are going to use them. It's... People will set up Discord things for it. People... they might set up... Are the communities things in it? I can't remember if the communities... I can't remember. Are they? If not, it'll be Discord. So they might as well put the new communities feature in it, because otherwise you're using Discord for it. People are... I don't think... I suppose you might expect more people to use the Realm forums than would use them for retail versions. but I don't see them as being like they were at the time. In fact, most of the community spirit on the forums, as I recall, obviously I can only speak for my own realm, as John Nero BU, was actually when the servers went down on patch day and you couldn't play the game. So then people would go onto the forums while they were waiting for it to come back up. And that's when you got to sort of, you know, chat to people. That's not going to be a thing. You used IRC back in Vanilla. It is pretty similar. Obviously Discord is better, but yes. Yeah. So, hang on a minute. Is that a sneaky little... is that a sneaky little hint to me there, Fraser? The results haven't come out yet. Oh, okay. What would we all think of a server with no add-ons allowed on it? I don't see that there's a demand for that. And I also... I mean, add-ons have always been allowed in the game. You know, the add-ons that we will get with Classic WoW will not necessarily be the same ones we got then. I'm not saying they'll be as sophisticated as some of the ones we've got now because different architecture. But people will still know much more in advance what sort of add-ons people are going to find most useful. There's no trial and error anymore. So we are going to get a very different set. Boss mods, definitely. Like, I never used my first boss mod until Thaddeus, and that wasn't because I needed it. It was because we were made to use it. And actually, that boss mod, Thaddeus was a terrible fight for disconnects because there's so much in there. And I never used to disconnect until we were made to use that add-on because some people couldn't tell left from right. It was retarded. But that was bigwigs. And that was the first time I ever came across a boss mod. We had CT raid assist, and there was also aura for some people use that. I use CT raid assist. But in terms of boss mods, no, that was the first one I ever used. Whereas now people will use them from the start because they will be there. So no, I think add-on use will be much more widespread when it's Classic WoW. Oh, quest helper add-on, oh dear. You could literally script within the old add-on system though. Well, they did used to keep taking that away. Because yes, you could. In fact, there were add-ons that just let you press one button to heal, for example, and it would automatically select a player to heal, select an appropriate spell at the appropriate rank. Absolutely appalling, that. Appalling. I reckon there were a few people in my guild who used that. But, you know, eventually... like there was also the emergency monitor on CT Raid Assist, wasn't there? So if you were casting a heal on someone and they got healed before your heal got off, it would cancel your heal to save mana. That was a dirty little trick as well. And they stopped that. So because they said they're going to set it at 1.12, I am going to suspect that some of those types of add-ons just won't work right from the start, you know. So yeah, I think so. Those sort of things I don't think will work. But in terms of the add-ons we'll get that we maybe didn't have so much of then. What was that add-on called? There was a very important add-on for dungeons. People pugging dungeons. Was it called Loot Hog? Basically what it did is when everyone rolled for the item, because there wasn't a... well, when everyone rolled for the item, did a /roll, it came up with who got the highest roll. Never saw that after Vanilla. You're highly dependent on bag on. I won't worry about it. We're going to have much less bag space. You're limited to 16 slot bags and it'll be a while before you get them. Don't worry about it. Private server community has produced a new generation of vanilla add-ons. It doesn't surprise me at all. Proximity check in raid frames and all kinds of fancy nonsense. Yeah, it does not surprise me in the slightest. Obviously, we don't know that all of those would work. Well, they wouldn't work, but, you know, even a modified version we don't know would work with Blizzard's version. We'll have to see. But I strongly suspect we will see more sophisticated add-ons. You're hoping Blizzard will let you mod the character models to the new in Classic. They won't. Oh, no, they won't. No, forget about that hope completely. Lazy Pig. Was it? It might have been Lazy Pig. I seem to remember Hog, Pig, Porcine related name to it. I can't remember though. But no, it means I can recreate my ugly paladin again. The one who looked like he'd been smashed in the face with a hammer. So, yeah. Holy crap! Sorry. Oh, sorry, I've just read news. No, not talking about it. Sorry, not to do. The news is just in, sorry. Right. Back to World of Warcraft. The... 130. 130. Holy shit. 130. Anyway, never mind that. I've completely forgot what we're talking about. Sorry, it is politics. I apologise. It's gone now. It's finished. I am very happy. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, Classic WoW. So, you know, I mean, the add-ons I remember at the time that I wouldn't want to do without. So whichever add-on it was that told you who won the role. What else do we have? So CT Raiders, but that would only be if I got into raiding. Remember, I'm not sure I'd even level up that quickly. I'm not sure I would raid again. I don't need to raid again. I don't know. I can't swear to it. I mean, I can't even raid in retail. I don't think I'd be able to put in the hours to raid in a version of the game I raided in years ago and had my fill of. I'm not saying sick of, but, you know, I did it. All right, I didn't do the last few bosses. But, you know, it's not bad going. So that possibly not so much. I mean, they had damage meters. Got to have a damage meter. But yeah. Nostalgia is to be a lot less grindy than you remember Vanilla. Well, now, here we go. So, Vanilla for me, it took me a lot longer to level up, and it wasn't anything to do with the grind. If I tell you that it took me 21 game days to get to level 60, that's not... And I know people will think, oh, well, Paladin, what do you expect? It wasn't anything to do with that. It's because I leveled up as an enchanter. I couldn't get enough materials to level my enchanting. Like, what I should have done is I should have waited till I got to level cap and then leveled up my professions. That would have been more efficient. But I didn't. And to be fair, I never do that in MMOs. I always try and level up as I'm doing it. I just like I like to level my professions as I level my characters. And I know it slows me down. For a first game, I don't care about WoW expansions. I haven't even leveled it up now. But the thing with enchanting, yeah, I couldn't get enough materials, even though I was a tailor as well. So you had to buy materials as well. I didn't have that much gold, so I had to sell things. So the way I had to do it was selling some of my enchants. Now, you couldn't put them on a vellum then. What you had to do was you had to actually just stand around in Ironforge advertising your enchants for sale. And you had to enchant them directly onto the person. So there was a lot of time spent in Ironforge just for that purpose. So 21 game days. I'm not going to be doing that this time around. We're living very interesting times, yes. I could enchant my own brace 300 times, but then I don't get the money to buy the more materials. You know, that's the issue. I needed the materials. The materials cost gold. I didn't really have much gold. You don't get enough just by leveling up. You have to sell things. Unless you get lucky enough to find a BOE epic, which I didn't do that until well after this event. You hope TSM works in Classic. What's TSM? Hang on. Am I forgetting something? What's TSM? I mean, another thing, our trade skill master. I don't know. I suppose I don't know of any reason why they wouldn't be able to make a version for it. Didn't they say they were offering a subset of the API rather than the current one? All I remember is that they did say that add-ons that work in current retail would not necessarily work in that version because it's a different system, different architecture. So beyond that, I don't know. I suppose decisions will have to be made. It works in Burning Crusade. Yeah, I mean, I see no reason why an add-on that can interact with the auction house wouldn't work. And although, would we want that? Now we think about it. Because don't add-ons like that, isn't that the thing that causes people to put shit on in stacks of 1 that really should go in stacks of like 100 or something? Or 20? Because obviously things won't stack up as much as they do now. Like you can stack up trade materials up to 200 now. You couldn't do that then. I think it was like 20 or something. So the stacks would be smaller, but you still might get some arsehole who puts on iron ore in stacks of 1 or something like that. And an add-on will enable them to do that. Whereas if they were... So it might be that they decide not to allow such add-ons just to stop that sort of behaviour. Because their only alternative is to do what they're doing in retail to try and stop that behaviour. And obviously they're trying to avoid making changes to the game as much as possible. And the reasoning could be, well, at least as far as I know, we didn't really have auction house add-ons back then, so we could probably do without allowing them, I guess. So I'm just trying to think if there are any other, because I didn't have a load of add-ons. Some people had that buff ahoy or whatever it was called, but that was stupid. That was just like a voice macro that says, come here, I want to buff you. No. I used to just run around buffing people. It gave you a good view of where everyone was as well. Important to know where everyone is. You can keep an eye on the gnomes then. You hope they restrict the add-ons quite heavily. I mean, I certainly think it would take a lot of discussion to decide which types of ones they should allow and which they shouldn't. I imagine there'll have been a lot of discussion on that. But they have always, Blizzard has always as a company, or certainly with World of Warcraft, actively encouraged people to make add-ons for it. You know, they've been quite good about that. I mean, some MMOs do try and restrict it quite severely. So I think that would be okay. Oh, it would be interesting having logs, wouldn't it? I presume we'd still be able to have logs. Because World of Logs didn't come in until TBC. So as far as I recall, there were no actual logs for Vanilla. So that could be interesting. It was bad enough people playing for damage meters in Vanilla without actually giving them logs, but there you go. Were they in Classic? That's odd. I didn't encounter them till TBC myself. Well, I know you could make logs in Classic. What I mean is, you know, sites where, like World of Logs is the first one I recall, where you could upload those logs and get a breakdown of stuff. I never encountered that. I never personally encountered that until towards the end of Black Temple. But, you know, I may not have been in a guild that was one of the first to use, of course. Watch Blizzard charge for add-ons. They're not going to charge for add-ons. You had some obnoxious add-on suite in your guild that you mandated it. What Deus Vox Encounters was based on. Allowed you to pull combat logs from people and track cast bars across the raid. Oh, that has just reminded me of an add-on, though. There was an add-on that was quite handy for a healer. And what it did when you targeted someone for healing, it allowed you, if someone else was casting, you know, a useful, a beneficial spell on them, usually a heal, of course, it allowed you to see what they were casting, who was casting it. So that could allow you to decide whether it was worth you casting your heal on them. Guilds made their own sites back then. Some certainly, yeah. The website kits that show the logs, okay. I mean, we only started using them when it became more widespread with World of Logs then, because it's not something I came across. Hi, Jimmy. I mean, you didn't really need them anyway. I don't know what useful information you would have gleaned, for most people at any rate. I mean, usually in Vanilla, when something went wrong, it was pretty bloody obvious what went wrong. It was quite easy to tell. You know. Why did I die? Because you see that fire underneath your corpse? I think that had something to do with it. Well, that's the problem. For most people, logs are for EP, and obviously they have a very useful... hang on a minute. To have a very useful feature as well. They're absolutely vital for serious guilds. But unfortunately... Holy crap. Sorry, I keep seeing headlines. I'm going to have to stop it. It's all getting very exciting. So, yeah. It's a shame, really, that people aren't really team players enough in, like, the serious things. Because it's especially annoying because it's not even, really. Like, some people who think they win on logs or damage meters or whatever are not. You know, they're stacking the odds in favour of them and screwing everyone else over as they do it. So they're not comparing themselves like for like. In all cases, I mean, sometimes people get, you know, high ranks and rank ones and stuff like that by playing it exactly as they should be playing it, and they just happen to do very well at it. But all too often, you know, you're stacking things up in your own favour. What is going on? What the hell? Oh, sorry, someone's messaging me. So yeah. If it can be cheesed, it will be. Yeah, not everyone has that view. That's what annoyed me, because I had the view as I want this boss to die, and I want it to die as soon as possible. And, you know, later on, you know, not during Vanilla, because it was pointless during Vanilla, I sort of had the attitude, if I was in a guild that progressed at a high rate, if we kill everything quickly, you know, we progress through this raid quickly, and then we've got a long lead into the next raid, I have got no issue at that point with people playing for ranks, and I will even be the muggins that does the shit job to allow them to do it, provided that they did their job properly while we were progressing. I won't help anyone who tried to stuff us over while we were progressing. But, you know, you didn't care as long as the boss died. No, neither did I. Boss dying was the important thing. That's all I really cared about, you know. Doing it as efficiently as possible. That was the fun. And of course in Vanilla, you didn't have LFR, normal or heroic versions of the boss. You had the boss. If you wanted to see that boss go down, you either killed it properly or you did it or you watched someone else do it on YouTube. Was there even such a thing as Twitch though? Did people even stream then? I don't even know that. I don't know anything. Actually. Because even YouTube wasn't really... Was it a thing? I suppose it may have been a thing. But quite new. People didn't really use it that much. Certainly my first few videos, my first videos I did in TBC were not uploaded to YouTube. I wish I had. You've been on the PTI, it's unplayable. All the buildings keep disappearing. Really? I haven't been on yet this week. Oh, you yelled at a few people on progress. Oh, God, Well, I wasn't really a yeller. We had another raid leader who sometimes did that. But I did a couple of times. I did actually twice in Vanilla properly shout at people as raid leader. I have to say, though, in my defence, on one of those occasions I apologised, even though they bloody deserved it, because they kept doing the same thing wrong. Really? But the one where I properly lost it, and this is the one I apologise for, not because I shouted at them, but because I properly lost it. I went full Gordon Ramsay on them. And it was actually just AQ20. It wasn't one of the big raids. In AQ20, I don't know if people remember Burrow. So it was that like bug thing, and you had to go around knackering the eggs and stuff like that. And then eventually, Shell would pop off. And then you were on a timed race. You had to kill it really quickly. You had to just stand there, pommeling it. And it would still fixate on people, but you needed it to not move so that the melee DPS could do full DPS on it. That meant if it munched you, it munched you. And so there was this guy who hadn't really done it before. Because obviously 20-man, you know, and you've got a roster that does 40-man raids. There's only so many people getting in at any one time. And this guy, I explained what to do. I explained all the tactics. And this bug fixated on them, and they ran away from it. Ran away from all our melee. They were struggling to DPS it. We ended up wiping because they couldn't kill it in time. So I said to this guy, I didn't shout at him then. I said to this guy, look, I said at the beginning, right, but you're new to the fight, you may have forgotten. When the shell pops, you stand still. I even called it out on TeamSpeak. When the shell pops, you stand still. If it eats you, it eats you. If you die, we still kill the boss, we'll res you up. If you run away, you'll still die. And so will everyone else. And we won't be resing you up because we'll all be dead. And we won't have any loot either. And I said, do you understand? He said, yes. So I said, right. So we did it again. Shell pops. Fixates on him again. Well, it fixates on someone else first, then it fixated on him. And he runs away again. And I properly shouted. I was calling him all the names under the sun. Said, you said you understand. At this point, you've not seen me properly rage. I said, at this point, you must be deliberately fucking us over. Shout, 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 rant, 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 kicks them out of the raid, done. Now, but all I apologised for later was not the doing that, because they shouldn't have done that. That was not the standard I expected. I mean, standing still is one of the easiest things to be told to do in a raid. Let's be honest. Not touching your movement buttons is got to be the easiest instruction you can be given. So, yeah. And then there was another time when I shouted at someone, but I don't actually remember the details of that. Anyway, never mind. People who demand classic and classic are crazy. Even simple things you remember, like shaman gear dropping for raids while playing lines. I used to take some of it. Do you know what? My best DPS gear as a paladin was actually, a lot of it was shaman gear. Or a bit of it. There was a bit of it that was shaman gear, I should say. And it meant that my health was actually quite low. But, you know, some of it was really good. It had a lot of attack power on it, that male gear. But not much stamina. Sometimes no stamina on it at all. That was the thing. Some DPS gear had basically no stamina on it. Or very little. You had a really bad one on Heroic Lich King. And again on Heroic Shimmeron. Oh, yeah. Your guild in Wrathcatter was super ragey across the board, though. Yeah, I don't go in for just shouting for the sake of shouting. That doesn't do any good at all. In fact, it's more effective if you hardly ever do it. Because people sit up and pay attention then. Because if you're normally nice and calm, and then you suddenly bawl someone out, it gets a reaction. Whereas if you're always shouting, and the people just tune it out because you're always shouting. You know. In fact, even that's got to, we got told that was one of the lessons we were taught when I was doing my teacher training. See, when you've got these kids, if you imagine two sets of kids, because they don't actually go to school until they're 5 years old, after which the parents might have already buggered them for life. And if you've got like the kids of the parents who are attentive, and when the kid does something wrong, the parent says, you know, you shouldn't be doing that, and explain all the rest of it. And then you've got another kid, and the parent's not very attentive, and all they're doing is shouting at the kid all the time, and every time they do something, they just shout at them and don't say anything. Then they go to school, and a kid does something wrong, and the teacher says, you really shouldn't be doing that, you know. You know, the kid who's been brought up by an attentive parent goes, ooh, I shouldn't be doing that, and they stop doing it. The kid who's used to being shouted at goes, oh, I shouldn't be doing it, but that doesn't mean to say I can't do it, and you're not shouting at me, so you can't be that pissed off, I'll carry on doing it. And then they end up being labelled as naughty. So, using it in small doses is the most effective. Did a guild have good communication in vanilla raids? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We used TeamSpeak. In fact, I remember my very first raid with the guild, the first proper raid guild I joined. I had a problem with TeamSpeak in that, for some reason, I could talk and they could hear me, but I couldn't hear them, and I didn't know why. And eventually, I stopped trying to fix it because I thought they're going to get pissed off with me holding everything up. So I just went, yeah, it's sorted. And I went through the raid. And it was an hour and a half before people realised that I couldn't hear them. So I thought I didn't do too badly. I got an hour and a half in without anyone feeling that I needed shouting at. Vent costs had good quality. Yeah, in the guild I joined after that, which was right at the end, they used Ventrilo. I wasn't as keen on Ventrilo. TeamSpeak had a huge advantage in Channel Commander. That was a big when you talk about communication, that was a spectacular thing. But there was a funny story with that. Basically, so what Channel Commander was, for those who are not familiar with TeamSpeak, is if you're one of the channel commanders, in other words, one of the officers assigned on TeamSpeak, you can press a particular bind, and then when you speak, all the other channel commanders can hear you, but no one else. So that's useful for two things. First of all, if there's officers split across different channels, you can still have an officer discussion. But also in the raid itself, when you're in the same channel, it means you don't have to move channels to an officer channel. You can just do your private chat there without anyone hearing you. But there was a situation when I first became an officer. By then, we'd sort of stopped doing Zul'Gurub, but I thought we should have carried on doing it. And because not everyone had the shoulder enchants, and, you know, there's other stuff you could get as well. So I organised on Sunday afternoons these raids where raiders got priority, but if there were spare spaces, alts and socials could join as well. And but it was mostly raiders. And there was this one guy who was desperate to get the tiger mount, and he would offer anyone like a load of gold if they won it, but they would give it to him. Now, I wasn't very happy about that arrangement. As far as I was concerned, if you roll on something, it means you want it yourself. That's what a need roll is, you know. After that, it could be a greed roll. So I didn't like the idea of letting someone win it who was just going to then sell it. It just didn't sit right with me. That being said, the officer team that was the officer team before I became an officer had already agreed he could do that. So I thought, okay, well, all right, I've inherited that policy. Fine. But, you know, I wouldn't always do the bosses in the order he wanted, because he wanted to go to that boss ASAP. And he always feared that we'd run out of time before we'd get to it, which we never did. And he kept pestering me. And I kept telling him, we're going to get round to it. Chill out. And do you know what? I got so sick of him one time. There was another officer in there, and I just pressed what I thought was the channel command button and said, if he doesn't stop bothering me about this mount, I'm not going to invite him to any more of these runs. And then the officer said to me, you didn't use channel commander for that, so I must have hit the wrong bind. So basically everyone heard me. But I'll tell you what, he didn't pester me again after that. So maybe it was just a good thing that I did it publicly. So, yes. I've been missing a load of comments while I'm talking shit. You just remember people communicating really badly. No, we were fairly well organised, actually. We were all right. The only bad bit of communication we had, actually, ironically, when I left that guild to join the best guild on the server. I didn't leave that guild to join the best guild on the server, by the way. I left it for other reasons. But I did join the best guild on the server then. They had a weird situation. So they used Ventrilo, right? Everyone was on Ventrilo, apart from one person, the raid leader. The raid leader did not use voice comms. That was weird as hell. So basically what he demanded of you, and he was, actually it was maybe a good idea because he was a very shouty person. Imagine being a shouty person when you're not even using voice comms. He achieved it. But, you know, he prepared all these like raid warnings and stuff. He would spend some time typing in exactly what he wanted people to do. And woe betide anyone who did not carry it out to the letter and coordinate themselves during the fight itself. So yeah, but other people were on Ventrilo, and you usually found out that some people would help out with that level of coordination there. I thought the guild should do Zul'Gurub because Japadina didn't have the Jindo mace. I didn't want the Jindo mace. I had my Azure Song Mage Blade. I was more than happy with that. I pissed off a lot of gnomes over that. There were 2 gnomes who wanted the Azure Song Mage Blade when I won it. Mages. Actually, one of them might have been a warlock. Don't care. Doesn't matter. It's not a paladin weapon. It's not a paladin weapon. Oh, I think you'll find it is. It was an awesome healing weapon. Azure Song Mage Blade, Red Scale Dragon Protector, Hide of the Wild. Until I got Cloak of the Broodlord, managed to piss off some more mages that way. Although, actually, to be fair, a mage did actually pass on it for me. Cloak of the Broodlord, now that I think about it. Yes. So no, it was honestly about the fact I wanted people to have the shoulder enchant. You got to remember, the only shoulder enchant you were going to get if you didn't do Zul'Gurub was the +5 to resistances from the Argent Dawn. And that was only if you were like, you had to be at least revered for that. And most people, I was, because I used to love running Strathoma Scholomance. Most people were not. You used the Jindo Mace. I used the Azure Song Mage Blade still. I'm trying to think, did I ever replace that as a healing weapon? I'm not sure I did, you know. I don't think I did. Ventrilo ran better than TS, yeah, but he didn't have Challenge Commander. You know. Sounds like the guild you were in Vanilla through Tier 5 guy was literally a drill sergeant. I mean, you do still now have very shouty raid leaders. Yeah, I think you've got to remember as well, these days, even very serious guilds, not the super serious ones, but very serious guilds, raid like 2 or 3 times a week on average. Okay, that's now typical. I don't think guilds existed that raided that little back then. You raided 5 nights a week minimum. Some of them raided 7 nights a week. To be fair, raid leaders not only needed to do all the usual preparation they have to do now, but also do all those raids a week. That's, I can imagine them getting a little bit testy if people are not doing what they're supposed to do, especially when you give them a piece of piss job. What do I think the final version of the regeneration racial will be? 100% heal after 4 seconds still seems way too good. Even interruptible. I don't know. I mean, because obviously the interruptible part is only going to be relevant for PvP. And no one's going to care about it for PvE. And, you know, I don't PvP, so I don't really know. I mean, you're right, 100% heal after 4 seconds is probably, well, it's certainly too good for PvP. But we'll just have to, I mean, they haven't got long to change it, if they're going to change it at all. You did 25 hours a week, yeah. See, I mean, I technically did 8. Not all of them were compulsory, it has to be said, but I did 8 raids a week because we did every evening plus Sunday afternoons for my Zul'Gurub raid. At one point, anyway, it wasn't always 8 all the way through vanilla, but at a certain point, it was 8. The other good thing as well, the thing that made it very easy, because that was the other thing, you had to incentivize people to come along on Sunday afternoons to get their shoulder enchants. And the way I did that was we had enough bijous and tokens and coins, sorry, in the bank to let people get their stuff. So what I said is, right, at the end of the run, all the bijous and coins I've collected, I'll divvy out amongst everyone. And you could sell them for about 100 gold. The ones, each person's allocation would be about 100 gold's worth. So you could make, 100 gold back then, just for an afternoon in Zul'Gurub. That was well worth it. Well worth it. You know, that certainly covered all your costs and more. Yeah, the off nights we had outrun. So that technically, yeah, we didn't have 7 compulsory nights. We had 5 compulsory nights and then 3 non-compulsory raids, usually for the 20-man stuff and Onyxia's Lair. In your opinion, should we just give those racial choices to everyone? Perhaps design unique choices for each race. I don't like the idea of racials having an impact on gameplay, because it then, the race is like it should be a cosmetic choice, I think. And I know, I accept that in a lot of role-playing games it's not. Even my beloved Dungeons and Dragons, I understand that it's not. But, you know, I just think a race should be a cosmetic choice. It looks to make the Draenei racial look pathetic. Well, the Draenei racial always looks pathetic, I think. But yeah, it certainly is by comparison. What the hell is that? You still haven't thought of a single good use for the walking speed rift Velf racial. You've got a plan for it. You've got to be cunning. Star Wars: The Old Republic racials are cosmetic. Yeah, they are. But things like, what was I thinking of? Lord of the Rings Online, they're not. Elder Scrolls Online, they're not. So there are other ones where they're not as well. And they're quite powerful in Elder Scrolls Online. Race, I would say the racials are more powerful in ESO than they are in WoW. It's not like WoW's the worst for it. But yeah, it's not a thing I'm particularly keen on. If they're going to design a game with ultra competition, they should realise the conflicting racials that give tangible benefits. Well, I don't know. I'm less concerned about the ultra competitive people, because they will just choose the race that is best for that class, and they will change it as necessary. Now I will grant you the fact that you've got to choose a faction at least for that guild means that some players in that guild will not be able to choose the best race, because if the best race is on the opposite faction, you're snookered. But by and large, you will choose. It's other players that don't really want to be choosing based on a racial, but want to base it based on, you know, cosmetic benefits, and I think this should be able to. But you know, that's my view. They're not. They don't agree. If you think about it, the last few races have had. In fact, all of the allied races have had really powerful racials, haven't they? Or most of them. Some stunningly powerful ones. Incidentally, small plug. Don't forget, if you have a Dark Iron Dwarf and you want to go around and get the mole machine stuff, I did do a video a while ago on how to get them. I did it in the beta. I did actually put a little thing on Twitter and Facebook to remind people about that. Because some of them are a little bit tricky to find. Or at least I found them so. The Gorgrond one was a bit awkward. In 2 ways, actually. But yeah, the racials, the Dark Iron... I'd have definitely made a Dark Iron Dwarf if I'd have still been Alliance. Definitely. I reckon I might even have been willing to sacrifice my Pandaren warrior for it. Because I love the Pandaren for a warrior, because I think their stance when wielding a two-hander is amazing. I think it's the best two-handed stance there is. And wielding 2 two-handers is absolutely spectacular. So stingy the way you can't transport your party with the Dark Iron Dwarf mole machine. Yes, I suppose it is, yeah. But never mind. But it's a nice little racial. Even though, that's the sort of racial I like. It's characterful, but no one's going to choose it just because of that. You know, that it's not making you powerful in a dungeon or a raid or something. I mean, maybe they fear that if there were no racials, that no one would play a Tauren at all. Who knows? Oh. So yeah, I just think the way, if you look at what they do, they're clearly, because sometimes you never know what they're thinking about in the background. You know, I only get to find out things occasionally about Ret Paladins, nothing else. And the fact that they're not, you're a Tauren Pally. I don't know. It's like some people just don't like style. They don't like to be stylish. It's almost like that, really. But yeah, you sometimes think there might be things that Blizzard are talking about privately, but they're not going to talk about it until they've sort of made their mind up. But this clearly isn't one of them if you look at the direction it's gone on them. If regeneration breaks on damage, that would be nice so that it doesn't negate raid mechanics. For the Velf racial, you can use it to skip the orbs in Sethrilus. Oh, can you? You say, well, one set of them. Not thought of that. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'd never thought of that. Obviously, I don't have a Void Elf now, really, so... Lightbringer, you've not besmirched the Lightbringer set by putting it on a cow. Please tell me you're at least a female Tauren. Please at least give me that. But no, the Void Elf racial, I mean, it'd be really powerful if if you could just use it as a blink. So obviously it had to have some downsides. You're female, right? Okay. There's some hope then. I have managed to see some Tauren Paladin transmogs such that you can almost not tell they're Tauren. You do eventually when you notice they're not wearing shoes. But, some of them can almost look like that. The best Tauren set for Sunwalkers. Yes, call them Sunwalkers, that's better. Siege of Orgrimmar one. Which one? Siege of Orgrimmar. Is that the one with the feathers? Trying to remember which one that looks like now. But I'm not sure they should be allowed to wear any Paladin sets. Maybe they can be allowed to wear the ones I don't like. Maybe it's like tier 1 or tier 3. Yeah, the feathers on it. Yeah, I remember that. I don't know. They can wear tier 1 or tier 3 because I think that looks appalling. What do I think of the new Horizons flyby of Ultima Thule? Will that flyby help to confirm our theories on planet formation? Maybe. But... I mean, that's the hope at the moment. We'll just have to see what they find. I mean, ultimately, when you're doing these sort of flybys, although they'll say they're looking for certain things, really what they're doing is just wanting a snoop and work out stuff from it that can sometimes be unexpected. You don't wear the Lightbringer tabard as a cow because it just doesn't follow law. Well, I wear my tabard of the Protector. That is my tabard for my Paladin. Pluto isn't a planet now. And I always felt before it was classified that it never should have been called a planet. Because it was always much more likely to be a satellite of Neptune or several satellites that got knocked out of orbit. That was the likelihood. But that's not ultimately the reason they reclassified it. They reclassified it because they realised that if they weren't careful, they were going to have to, instead of learning 9 planet names, they were going to have to learn like 100. So, as soon as you start discovering dozens of objects that have the same, orbital types as Pluto, then Never mind justice for Pluto. Who wants justice for a planet that's named after a cartoon dog drawn by an anti-Semite? I know also, obviously, God of the Underworld is really why it's called that, but still. Not when I was a child, it wasn't. The only Pluto I knew was the orange dog. Isn't Neptune's a captured object? Orbits the wrong way. Well, sort of, yes. Well, its axis is a bit skewiff. Well, very skewiff. They feel sad for Pluto because they think of Pluto the dog, but Pluto the dog was a pain in the ass. I mean, we don't know. Obviously, it's difficult to imagine in some ways rocky satellites forming around a gas giant. I mean, this is it when it comes to like planet formation. It's very tricky to know how these events can actually happen. What's much more likely, of course, and this is what causes the rings, is that larger objects were broken up because of the tidal forces. You know, that's what causes the rings around the gas giants, and may well be what caused many of the satellites as well, that they were originally larger bodies. No, who knows? But anyway, we keep moving away from World of Warcraft. Again, if we want to discuss celestial objects, it should be the red star in the sky, where Sargeras has been held prisoner. Hopefully forever. I don't like it when they bring villains back. It's ridiculous. Obviously, you know, they did the most ridiculous one in TBC. No, we're not allowed to talk about Brexit. Upsets people. No, we're not supposed to talk about planets in space either. Unless those planets happen to be Draenor and Azeroth. And the space happens to be the Twisted Nether. We can talk about those. What about Argus? Well, I don't know what's happened to Argus. I don't know if it even exists anymore. That's the thing about Argus. You know, it disappeared and is now, or the remains of that area, shall we say, is a red star. I don't really know what the red star is exactly supposed to be. You just want to see Beetlejuice explode. Well, it is pronounced Beetlejuice. As silly as that sounds, that is actually how it's pronounced. You've been sub for 3 years? Oh, I can't believe I've had the channel for 3 years. I have, haven't I? Yes. Just over. Argus is still a shit. Argus was always a shithole, though. Well, ever since we set foot on it anyway. No, that's Argos, William. Behave. Anyway, what are you getting a PC desk from there for? We made things worse for the remaining inhabitants. Well, we made things a lot worse for the Eridar. I think it's fair to say. Or the Minari, whatever you want to call them. Do I think there'll be a new WoW movie or TV series made at some point? Didn't someone say something about that? A TV series. I don't know, I might be making it up. But Beetlejuice won't explode. It's the wrong sort of star to explode. But I could certainly see a war. The thing is, though, the thing that gets me about Warcraft, if they did do a TV series, I don't get why, if they'd be up for it, it hasn't already been done. Not a live action one, of course. A animated version. So it actually often surprises me that they haven't done one. I don't know why that would be. The red light might be a glowing prison that is moving away from us and experiencing redshift, hence the red colour. Yeah, but that would be to assume that it was the light that's actually been emitted is higher frequency. I mean, redshift can make it go from red to, say, infrared or invisible. It might be moving away from us, and the reason it looks red is just because that's the colour of its tail lights. I don't know. I didn't get a good look at the prison, if I'm going to be honest. You know, when we were hurtling away from the said prison, we were rather preoccupied with the fact that, you know, there was a dirty great sword sticking out of Azeroth. The Kokol, Sodom. Do you remember how they treated us when we first encountered them? Miserable bleeders. How are they survived on a dying planet? By dying, I imagine. They said they adapted to match the planet, didn't they? So if the planet dies, so can they. Easy. Don't even have to put any effort into that adaptation. We need a separate expansion to explain all this. They can explain it in the Warcraft Chronicles later on. Warcraft Chronicles Volume 8 or something. Beetlejuice will go supernova now. It'll go nova, maybe. Don't believe that. Based it on the fact that a lot of the Titan magic seem to be blue, green and yellow. Let me just double check now because I don't want to get this wrong. That'd be... Hold on. Beetlejuice. What classification is it again? Do I trust Wikipedia? No, I don't. Let's have a look here. What classification is it, you pain in the ass? All right, maybe it will. Fine. Okay. All right then. Yes. Okay. It might blow up. For someone who's not read any WoW novels, which one would I recommend the most? Well, if you play BFA at the moment, then the one I would recommend the most is Before the Storm because it's the one most relevant to this one. In general terms, though, War Crimes is quite good. Now, what I can't remember the name of the bloody thing. The one that's like post Defeat of the Lich King. Shit, what's that one called? Let me look that one up. Forgotten what that's called. I've completely forgotten. It's probably got a really obvious name as well. Can't find it. Let's have a look here. The other, I can't, there are some other good books. The problem is that when you're talking about the books that are based on the storyline before World of Warcraft, it's almost all been retcon now. So it's almost like I don't really want to recommend that. You didn't like Before the Storm. You thought the writing was stale compared to some other books. Right. I thought it was okay. But as I say, if we don't end up with the Forsaken fracturing, I don't see the point in it. So the book itself I thought was fine. I read it. It was engaging enough. I'm not saying it's the best book I've ever read. I think it's superior to Warhammer books is what I always say. I think Warhammer books have very nice stories, but I think a big problem with them, they're not very well written. Let's have a look. I need to find out. Just trying to look at books, see if it's Tides of War's not bad actually, but no, actually no, that's not bad. You could go. Oh, Shadows of the Horde's really good. Vol'jin, that's a really good book. In fact, that's actually quite a good book again to read now if you play BFA, because Bunsamdi is in there. Dawn of the Aspects, yeah, the origin stuff on Dragonflights and Titans, that sort of stuff, is probably best avoided unless you just want to read it purely for enjoyment. If you want to read it for lore, you've got to bear in mind the older stuff tends to have been retconned by now. Do I think both factions will come back together in the end? I don't know now. You know, they seem to want this, like, all-out war thing. We'll have to see if they're just like a little child who's got a toy that they wanted for months and plays with it for 5 minutes and then gets bored, or if they're really serious about it. I just don't know. Your German wheat beer has no flavour. Well, put something in it then. Put a shake of cayenne pepper in it. But yeah, anything to do with like the pre-World of Warcraft events has quite a lot of it has been retconned. Some of the World of Warcraft events have been retconned as well, has to be said. But yeah. But in terms of stories that have relevance to BFA, yeah, Shadows of the Horde does have some relevance because of the Bunsamdi link. And then, of course, Before the Storm. I'm trying to see if I can find... what other ones have I read that are decent? You believe that Battle for Azeroth is the last Horde versus Alliance story? I don't even see it as a Horde versus Alliance story at all. Because Battle for Azeroth is the Battle for Azeroth. Azeroth is a planet, not a world to be conquered in this context. No, I'm not seeing any others that stand out as being ones that I thought were really good. I haven't read any of the Traveller books. They might be alright. No, can't see anything else. I wasn't that keen on the Shattering, I have to say. I'd read that, but I'm not that bothered about that. I won't worry about that. Have I had a bash of the PTR at all? No. I've only read so far the data mine stuff, but I will be. But I mean, someone was saying earlier today that they couldn't really get on it properly, and I know there's a couple of other people I've known said that they've struggled. We fight each other on war fronts. We fought each other in battlegrounds, but that didn't make it really Horde versus Alliance. We fought each other in battlegrounds when the narrative of the story was cooperative. You know, there will be people who went into a battleground during Wrath of Lich King, came out of the battleground and then did the Wrathgate. They even nicknamed Darin de Paul for the voice of N'Zoth. Oh, nicked Darin de Paul. He was the voice for Emperor Valkorion from Star Wars, was he? Yeah, I am very much looking forward to the proper N'Zoth stuff starting. It has the potential to be an actual epic storyline, unlike the, you know, hors d'oeuvres we've been getting so far. Some of which have been a bit grisly, I have to say. So I am looking forward to something to get my teeth into story-wise. What change would make me have interest in WoW PvP? Proper, full-on world PvP. And what I mean by that is a massive zone specifically for the purpose of PvP. It's not a PvE area. There's no, well, there can be quests in it, but PvP related. It has to have fortifications, not one, multiple fortifications, other objectives as well. It has to have a topography which encourages having large raid groups that form like the armies that are invading and defending these areas. Smaller groups that will just tackle some of the smaller objectives or support the larger armies, and really small groups or individuals who will act as scouts, who will basically hide themselves and report on troop movements from the opposite faction to other people in the zone. Basically along the lines of Warhammer Online or Elder Scrolls Online. Yeah, Elder Scrolls Online is Imperial City. That is the only sort of PvP that I think is worth doing for more than just a little distraction. You know, like Battlegrounds, if you're going to do it with some people you know, I'm open to it. Like, for example, I noticed in Discord with my guild, Someone on Sunday was asking for people to join Battlegrounds. Now, I was downstairs working on something else. Had I been upstairs and on the computer, I probably would have said, yeah, all right, then I'll do a few. So, you know, I would potentially do that sort of thing every now and then if it's with people I know, if I've got nothing else to do. But if I do, then... Am I happy with the updated AB Warsong Gulch? Well, AB, I've never been totally averse to anyway. I don't mind AB. I have always hated Warsong Gulch, though. I have always considered it a deeply dull and distressing battleground to get into. And there was a time when that was the only one. I mean, there was a time when there were no battlegrounds. You know, I was playing when Warsong Gulch first came in. And it was a deeply terrible experience, and it always has been. And the experience has got worse the longer it's gone on, because every other battleground almost is better. So it's always disappointing. The only good memories I have of Warsong Gulch are of watching the Car Bots series. And if you haven't seen that, I strongly recommend it. Like, they don't do very much World of Warcraft stuff on Car Bots now. And actually, the stuff they do is shit. But the first 15 or so were really good. And in amongst some of those first ones, there was like 4 or 5 in a row that was like supposed to be this Warsong Gulch one. That is amazing. It's like the best thing I've ever seen related to Warsong Gulch and worth watching. That style of PvP is too complex for WoW. That's disappointing. But I know they won't do it. I don't know about being too complex. I don't see if lesser games that had way smaller budgets could do it. I really don't see how they can't. But, you know, whatever. But anyway, that is the only thing. That is it. Little skirmish, like brawls, that's not PvP. Battlegrounds could be seen as competition, much like the Olympics. There are no stakes in Battlegrounds compared to Warfronts when it comes to story. Well, you can make up your own story in Alterac Valley at least. It's hideous that all the meaty content is instanced. Yeah, but at least it means now they can totally separate PvE from PvP. There's no excuse for it now. There is now no joining between those two bits of content. Maybe they can bring back Winter's Grasp was awful. Winter's Grasp, to my idea of proper world PvP, is like garrisons to play a house in. It's nothing like it at all. Doesn't have any of the gameplay aspects. Because that's the problem with it. It has one focal point. Everyone just gets in and it ends up being a big old brawl. That's dull. There's no finesse, no style. Perhaps like properly done Warfront but not instance and similar objectives or PvP zones that buffed the controlling faction, more related to Wintergrass maybe. Yeah, see, Wintergrass for me, because when I heard of the idea of it, I thought, oh, this has got potential. And this is before I played Warhammer Online. Because I played Warhammer Online it was out, I think, but I hadn't played it properly. I didn't play it properly until I quit in early Wrath. But when I played the Wrath beta and I did Wintergrass, it was like, oh, this is awful. And the kick in the teeth with Wintergrasp is not only was it awful, but being right in the middle pretty much of Northrend meant that you couldn't fly over it because it would chuck you off your mount. So you had to go around it to get to places you wanted to get to. Be interesting to get an idea of what the developers are planning, not story, but core game designs and evolutions. What, so we can head it off before they commit themselves to it? Yes, it would. I'd be particularly interested in what they're discussing with regards revamping the levelling system. They must have a plan for attracting new players. They haven't before. They never have before. Anyone who had a plan for attracting new players would have a small team whose sole job it was to make sure that the levelling experience remained relevant to the rest of the game from expansion to expansion, instead of just chucked onto the rubbish heap of old expansions. But the fact that they're now talking about a major revamp, yes, it might suggest that they are now thinking of new players. But I do not believe they have before now. Or at least before you know, this yearish. Entire focus on retention isn't viable. No, it's not, but they have nonetheless focused on that. I don't even think they've done that successfully. Well, they haven't done it successfully this expansion, that's clear, because they've chopped their subs in half. If you know, if suggestions be true. So yeah, that's pretty bad. But it may be that the damage has already been done, you know. I mean, again, look at it. Look what I said earlier on. So at the moment, apparently they're supposed to be working on a long-term plan for the leveling content and experience in WoW. Okay, fine. But couple this with the idea that they've got to fix a load of stuff that they didn't think they should have to fix and therefore haven't budgeted for in BFA. They've still got to deliver all the content for BFA. They've still got to... They can't afford to get behind with the next expansion. Otherwise, that'll start off in an even worse position than BFA. And they've had their budget cut. I don't know how much, but they've had their budget cut for the first time ever, by the way. They don't sit right with a project that you could easily see them shoving down the priority list. Because unless they've assigned specific developers to do nothing but focus on the leveling content and planning out some awesome improvements to it, it will be put on the back burner for the foreseeable future. I don't see them catching up. I see them as having this massive in tray that they didn't expect, and I can't see them ever bringing it under control now. The game has to evolve meaningfully, not these macro evolutions that only push the bar a bit. You mean micro evolutions? Not stuff that's contained within an expansion. Well, I mean, this idea that you invalidate all the previous expansions when you bring out a new expansion is not good. It wastes so much content. Blizzard have announced when the next Mage Tower style of content coming out you really enjoyed. Oh, they are doing one. Actually, someone may have told me that last week and I forgot again because I'm an old man. But yeah, the Mage Tower was super popular, so it makes sense that they do something like that again. Just hopefully it's something that people want again. We don't know what they will do in the revamping before they tell us something. No, they don't. Well, they don't even know themselves what they're going to do. Remember, when they describe it as a long-term project, that means it's not this expansion. It means it's at least next expansion and probably not for the start of next expansion. That's what long-term for me means. It means probably, you've got to remember these are games developers. They do some things years in advance. So for a games developer, long-term might well mean 3 years away. It might mean that they don't even have they don't even have a target date for it. So, you know, we'll just... So, you know, wait and see, certainly, but don't hold your breath because you will go very, very blue. But for me, a leveling experience should not be a different game to the end game. Obviously, there's things in end game that you don't do while you're leveling, like the raids and stuff like that. But by and large, the experience, when you level, you should be getting an idea of what the game's about. And you don't get that with World of Warcraft. You'll be happy with the new Worgen models. It's kind of the thing that remains. See, I don't mind the Worgen as they are now, I've got to be honest. I think they look okay. I mean, I'm sure they'll look even better when they do revamp them. But I'm quite happy with the Worgen. Players who are leveling need more ways to interact with max level players. Yeah, apprentice type systems, work well in other games that use them, certainly. And events as well. You know, when you've got these like micro holidays. For some players, it's if they can't actually physically get to the place where the micro holiday is, that's disappointing. You know, that shouldn't be the case. So yeah, I think there should be more of that as well. And don't leave them out of these things. Do I think they'll ever bring back 40-man raids? No, not at all. There's a number... I miss them. I miss the epic scale of them. But there are a number of issues with them. It's more difficult for them to come up with encounters where 40 people have got something meaningful to do. If I'm honest, there's probably only... Cthulhu was the best one they did it for, even though there was a lot of repetition there. But everyone was gainfully employed there. You could actually have a situation where one person out of those 40 dying caused a cascade of shits to happen that you wouldn't recover from. I'm not saying that when we killed it for the first time, that no one died, but no one died until very late on in the fight when we killed it for the first time. So Cthulhu was a really well-designed fight from that point of view. But by and large, you were wasting, people. So no, there's that aspect to it. It's harder on the server, of course. You're going to more likely to get lag with more people, obviously. And imagine characters these days, warlocks with their hundreds of bloody imps and hunters with their pets and all this shit. I mean, oh no. Actually, I'm going to say hunters had pets then. Actually, they didn't. Because in raiding, you almost always wanted your hunters to be marksmen. And they didn't bother getting their pet out unless their pet had a specific purpose. Because pets did not piss off tanks. Pissed off everyone, actually. So it was generally marksmen without a hunter pet. So, but yeah, there were quite a lot of problems with 40-man raiding from their point of view. Not from our point of view. Because some people might imagine, it must have been so much harder to get rosters together for the guilds. It was easier. It's easier to maintain a roster. Excuse me. Let's imagine you need 25% more people than the size of the raid. So for 40-man raiding, you wanted a roster of about 50 people. It's easier to get a roster of 50 people than it is to maintain a roster of 25. And the reason for that is 50 people then, when there were 8 classes, there were 9 classes in the game, but each faction had 8 classes. That was straightforward. And each of those classes generally covered one role. Nowadays, we have 12 different classes covering multiple roles. I can't even remember how many roles we've got altogether. Hold on. So all of them have got DPS specs. I'm going to say 14 DPS specs though, 15, because I'm going to count hunters, druids and shamans as having ranged and melee as different roles. I'm going to say melee and ranged DPS as different roles. So 15 straight away there. Then you've got healers. So healers, you've got paladin, shaman, monk, priest, druid. I'm missing someone, aren't I? Paladin, shaman, monk, druid, priest. Is it 5 healers? I'm not missing anyone out, am I? 5. Okay. There's 36 specs, but they're not all the same. It's not 36 roles, is what I'm trying to work out. Roles. So that's 20. Then tanks. Paladin, warrior, death knight, druid, monk, demon hunter. 6 of those. So there's 26 roles. That took me a while. And I'm still fairly certain I'm missing out a healer, but I'm not. Oh, maybe I'm counting discipline and holy priest as different. No, I shouldn't do that. So 26 roles for 20 people. 26 roles, 20 people. There, you had basically, let's be honest, maybe 10 roles, because most warriors would be tanks, but fury warriors were sensible things to use. And just for the hell of it, let's say, what else can be something else? Priests, shadow priests were also useful. So let's say there were 10 roles back then for 40 people in the raid. And then your roster, 10 roles for 50 people in the roster. Now, 26 roles for 25 people, ideally in the roster. So it's way harder to maintain a roster now than it was then. I'm missing stuff, aren't I? Sorry. Time walking should also include having the option to scale down to the relevant expansions cap and do some dailies there. I mean, maybe they could just allow the dailies to scale to whatever level you are. Maybe that would be nice. Why are they even updating character models when there's so much broken in the game? Well, the two things. First of all, the people who will update those character models are not the people who will fix the game. Totally different developers. They're artists. They're not games developers. And the other thing is, and as I keep saying, there's a lot of people asking for it and nay demanding it. And like I keep saying, people do put a lot of store on cosmetic bits. People will actually forgive. If there's people just want things to do in the game, really. If some aspect of the game is broken, the people who really want to do that aspect of the game, of course, are going to be pissed off. But the majority of people just want something to do and to enjoy themselves, and cosmetic aspects of it improve that enjoyment. Pugging was a chore on quiet servers with 40-man raid. Yeah, you see, you know. I mean, I didn't even notice pugs being a thing for raids on my server until very late, like Nax time. And even then, it was usually alts of raiders who were doing Nax on their mains, but then did Molten Core on their alts, and then maybe got a few randoms in as well to fill up the sizes. No, garrisons were not player housing, that is correct. When you look back in a few years' time, at what point will I suggest it all went wrong for WoW? Or do I think the real damage is yet to come and previous damage can still be fixed? I am loath to say this. There's two areas in which I think they went wrong. The first of which is in Cataclysm. And although I wasn't playing at the time, the start of Cataclysm, I heard tell many times that the initial raids were nerfed, and then the subsequent dungeons, dungeons, and the subsequent dungeons that came out were much like the mop dungeons were a joke, largely because people complained they were too hard. I thought that was a mistake. What a better idea would have been was to have come up with an easy. If a lot of people are complaining about it too difficult, you don't ignore them. But maybe you come up with an easier level of dungeon to allow those players to play it. But they should have maintained the more difficult variants of it. And the second mistake, unfortunately, happened at round about the time, and I'm loath to blame one person, but it did happen at round about the time that a certain Ian Hazakostas' star was shining. You know, when he became... I know WoD was partly buggered anyway. They had to abandon quite a bit of WoD already. But since he's become assistant game director in the first place and then game director, and I think there's some aspects of what he's tried to do that have been laudable, but he doesn't have the ability to coordinate groups. The individual teams are clearly uncoordinated mess. And he ultimately is the person who's supposed to be ensuring that they are coordinated, and he's failing. And it's not necessarily through laziness or arrogance, he just doesn't have the skills to do it. And the fact that he hasn't seemed to have recognised this and gone off to develop those skills is disappointing. So those are the two things that I think have led to this. I mean, just when they were talking last week in terms of storyline about the fact that they get lots of developers involved in the storyline, not telling them about it, getting them to feed into it. Stupid idea. Absolutely appalling idea. When it comes to writing a storyline, you should have as few people involved as possible. Preferably one. The new Worgen and Goblin models will massively outlive the stupid Azeroth raids. Well, yes, of course. Cosmetic rewards outlive anything that they put in the game. I'm not saying, you know, obviously they need to put mechanics in the game as well and gameplay things. But yes, they are short-lived. The first plugin raid you did was ICC. That was a mess. The first... Actually, technically, yeah. The first raid I pugged on a main character was ICC myself, because that's when I came back to play super casually. So yeah, would have been that for me as well. Rosters in Classic were easy to maintain because you only needed 3 or 5 decent players. I would say you needed a bit more than that, you know, but you certainly didn't need 40 decent players in the raid. Half that, depending on how difficult the fight was. Cthulhu, as I say, Cthulhu would have punished any guild that only had, say, I think most decent guilds had 15 to 20 good players at least. If you only had 15 to 20 decent players, Cthulhu would have broken you. And there were many guilds on my realm that I set, as soon as because remember, we were the first ones to kill it. As soon as I'd done that fight, I remember, because I knew people in other guilds as well. And I remember saying, not trying to be a bitch or anything, but I remember talking to a few people in guilds where I knew what they were like. And I said, you ain't killing this boss. And they didn't. You know, they had no chance. Not Warcraft. It is Warcraft. You've been trying to find AS channel. It's just called Thete Wargaming. And the weight loss channel is called Dietetic Diaries. I'd better write that, actually. I'd better write that. Because it's not a normal word to use. But it does exist. I'm not making things up. But the Thete Wargaming one, at the moment, I'm struggling with content. It seems to be in my last place. But anyway, I keep plugging away at it. I don't really have it listed. No, it is on. If you follow me on Facebook and Twitter, you will, or sort of. Like when I post a video there, I put it on Facebook and Twitter. I don't do that with my other channels because they're not gaming channels. You thought they only had Christy Golden on the story? No. There's 100 writers. All leading up to BFA releasing, they were talking about how she was writing the story. Yeah, it's complete fabrication, that. We knew that before anyway, when these last-minute changes were being made to the storyline that then made no sense. You know. No. One wonders if Activision and Blizzard feed out of the same pot, as it were. If Activision cuts back, does it mean Blizzard will? Well, this is the thing I was saying. Like, developers, World of Warcraft developers have already been told there's going to be cutbacks. And the developers have already started talking about the fact that people from Activision have been coming into meetings. I mean, it's the same company, so technically, yes. I don't know how they distribute that pot, so to speak. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know that. But it is one company, and therefore technically has one pot that then has to be assigned to the different projects in that pot. And as it's the same company, I don't think it assigns so much to Blizzard and so much to Activision. I think it probably just assigns so much to each individual game. You raided Nax and Cthulhu was a shit show every time. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Now, these guilds that I was talking about, it's not, they killed things in Naxxramas, not necessarily. They were all of them were able to kill at least 5 bosses in Naxxramas, but not Cthulhu. Because the way Cthulhu works, there's one particular bit where you had to basically be in like groups like of 5-ish, and you had these tentacles to deal with. And you had to be on it. Even the healers had to DPS, and that's what the Avengers set was good for Paladins, because it gave you, you could do a load of holy shock damage and stuff like that. So if you let those tentacles get on top of you, for example, if someone died and that meant you couldn't deal with them, there wasn't slack either side of you, at least when you were first progressing on it and first killing it. So what would happen is, because you were on top of your tentacles, those tentacles would eventually overwhelm your group. Then they'd start overwhelming the groups either side of you. And before you knew, it was like a domino effect. So you needed people to stay. So one person dying, it wasn't like a lot of fights where if 20 people died in the first few seconds, it really didn't matter as long as the other 20 didn't. This time it mattered because it was tough. It was really tough. What's my area of science? Physics is my specialist area of science. Goldie Christian writes novel versions of the Beep Show that is the lore after 100 plus different writers are done with it. Yes. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you can argue she's got much more influence on it now, but there's still people interfering. I mean, when they say they go around and get developers to contribute to the story, that to me, my jaw just dropped. Although I enjoyed that thing last week, I really don't know what to call it. Discussion, we'll call it. I enjoyed watching it, but that just it just really made my jaw drop. I couldn't believe it. Even though I knew something must be wrong because of all the silly little plot holes. I mean, there's always going to be some plot holes. I don't mind that. But they're just ridiculous ones. They still call themselves Blizzard and Activision under Active Blizzard. Suggests a certain degree of autonomy. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't necessarily mean autonomy of budget. That'll all be decided centrally, won't it? And Activision have the most voting power, I suppose, on the board. But anyway, we're going to have to call it a day there. Sometimes we carry on for a little bit longer, but news. I've got stuff to do, I'm afraid. So thanks for coming on, everyone. I'll be back on again next week as usual, of course. And until next time, I will see you later.